Hello and welcome back to the building of this Fokker DR1. Now in the last video I'd finally bitten the bullet and made a decision on the engine. After lots of prevarication, I've already got another engine sitting in the background and I was thinking about purchasing a third, because what happens when you ask for advice on the internet? You get it. And it's obviously very contradictory because people have got different experiences and different ideas, and it doesn't mean that one's any more valid than the other. So I accept that, and the suggestions that I got range from that's way too much of a beast of an engine to stick it in, it'll be fine. But I was also very fortunate in that I've actually seen this engine powering a DR1 and flying in a plane, a quarter scale DR1. And it's worked in the past, so why shouldn't it work now? And obviously, as I've said in the other video, I don't intend opening that throttle up to full bore many times at all. So what's the purpose of this video? Well, what I'm going to try and look at today is the installation of the radio gear, the setting up of the tail surfaces, how I've done that, and basically turning this from a large static model as it is now to a working RC model. So let's have a closer look, first of all, at the tank setup. Well, this is the tank that I'm going to use. You can see it's already plumbed up. The loop is for the breather, and obviously the loops actually prevent the fuel from running out when the airplane is flipped over. This is going to this is the carb, and this will be the fill tube. Both of these will exit out the bottom of the aircraft, and there'll be a plug that goes into each to stop the petrol or gas, as you say in the States, from flowing all over the car on its way to and from the field. And I'm also going to install one of these little cute little noise pumps. Now it's a little hand pump. It goes one end in there and the other end goes to the carb. My experience, very limited though it is, in running petrol engines, is that they almost all have a universal Warbro carb on them, and the strength of them and also the weakness is that they basically have an internal pump via a diaphragm. And that diaphragm ensures that the tank itself, the position of it, it's not critical because the engine via the pump is being supplied with petrol. However, if that diaphragm dries out at all or is dry at all, you can have problems in getting the engine started. I've experienced that with this engine that you can see in the background. That's a Zenoa that I'm not going to use. I think it's just too heavy for the setup. And it had a very dry diaphragm to the point I had to flood it. And when I did flood it, it started okay. So I fitted one of these pumps, and the procedure is this. Before I actually start the engine, this is how I'm going to do it. And before I even put the wings on, I'm going to fill the tank up and pump, because I don't want this thing stuck externally. I don't want it visible, I don't think. I'm going to pump the fuel into the carb. I suppose I could stick it underneath where it wouldn't be seen. And I found that if you just leave it for a few moments, that gives the diaphragm time to become wet. And I literally started this on numerous occasions the other day, and it was starting, if not first flick, second flick, every time after I'd done this. So that's what I'm going to do. Now I've got to fit it in here, and as I say, the height of it in relationship to the engine's not critical. So I'm going to put a couple of cross bearers in across the fuselage, drill a couple of holes, and then I'm going to cable tie that tank into position. But before I do that, I need to install the radio gear. Simply, I don't want to be reaching round over the top of a tank. So I'm going to install the servos first, and then I'll do that. But I just thought I'd talk about that while I was mentioning the tank and the engine. Now what you can see here are a couple of tillers that I've linked up to the elevator and the rudder, and I'm going to be using a closed loop or pull system, as I often refer to it, to operate both of those. Firstly, because I find them quite a precise control, and secondly, obviously, they're more scale-like. And what I've done, so this tiller, the nearest one to the camera there, this operates the elevator. So if I turn that round, now the far one over here hasn't been finely connected up, and I'll show you how how I set that up. And the way I had to do this was I fed the plain wire, which is actually a multi-strand fishing line that's covered in plastic, fed it down through the fuselage, and I've connected it up to an adjustable clevis on this side. Simply because, there you go, you can see them. The wire comes down, it's crimped into position, and there's an adjustable clevis there on a threaded bar. So the adjustment, although it's not easy, can be done at this end, and it's more scale-like than having big clevises, I think, at the other end. So it keeps it fairly neat. I'll show you how I'm going to set the elevator up to do the final part of that installation, and then we'll push on with actually putting the servos in place. I hope you can see there that I've got a small clamp on the elevator and tail to hold it in position, and I've actually got this wire going through the control horn. There's a small piece of aluminium tubing and a short length of heat shrink on there, and what I'm going to do is feed the return wire through once, and I'm going to put a little bit of tension on it, and then I'm going to slide it up, quite happy with that, and then I return the wire through again a third time. Obviously it gets a little bit tighter now, and what's happening there is I'm just catching the clevis, so it's stopping it going right through. Just bear with me. Come on. There you go. And I pull that through. And I'm going to slide over the heat shrink there. Now I'm happy with that. I'll slide the heat shrink back off. I know it now covers the wire. And I'm going to nip it 3 times with these, I think they're actually model railway cutters. I'm going to nip them in 3 places. Obviously I'm not cutting through, I'm just nipping them, and that'll hold them in position. It just needs a soldering iron and the excess cut off there, and I've now got that control surface in place. If I take the clamps off and I move the control surfaces now, it's a very positive movement on that control surface. I'm happy with that. So I'll tidy that up in a moment. And now let's have a think about the radio gear that's going in, the servos, the battery, the receiver, where I'm going to put them on. Well, these are the servos that I have. The metal gear, quite hefty lumps. I'm going to need 3 for the fuselage, and I've got 2 pushed to one side for the ailerons. First thing to do is to check them out. Got a little tester here, nothing sophisticated. Well, that jumps, so that's helpful. Let's just get an arm out to make sure everything's turning correctly. There we go. There's one. Actually, it's worthwhile. That's centered. So I'll push that one to one side. Check the others. It's always worth doing this. That's showing the full throw, manual, center. So that one's fine. Final one. They're digital servos, so they tend to draw more current. That means I'm going to put in quite a big hefty battery. I need one anyway, I think. That's working. There you go. So 3 abreast. I need them towards, just lift up, I need them towards the rear end of this fuselage. Approximately anyway. I've gathered that from rigging up the full aircraft with all 3 wings on. Quite surprised. I think a lot of other people seem to have been surprised as well. One will be on the throttle. One will be on the rudder and one on the elevator. So what I'm going to do is make a little tree up in that sort of configuration and maybe have room for a switch as well, or 2 switches, one for the ignition and one for the radio gear. I think I'm going to activate them through a small wire sticking out the side. I don't want to put them on the top wing because the top wing comes off. And I think they'll be fairly inobtrusive if I line them up with this black line that's marked on the fuselage. You can't see what I'm pointing at. What a dummy. So I'm going to put them on the side here, I think, and I'll line them up with this black line, paint them black, and you'll hardly see them. Just a small push-pull, and it'll be pushed in to be on. I think that's a safer measure, because if it was the other way around and you accidentally touch it and turn it off, you could be in a world of pain. So I'll make a tree up. I'll mock one up in cardboard first, and then we'll see how it's all going to fit in. Well, here we are looking inside the model, and that sort of box that you can see there takes a 5-cell NiCad pack and an old 35 receiver. Now I tried to take this out, I must admit, and it's going nowhere. So I think I'm going to be putting a battery pack in here and a receiver in there with the aerials routed out. Whoever owned this model before obviously had it set up in a very similar way, because that location is quite far back, and obviously was to get the CG correct. They must have had a big engine up front as well. You can see there the linkages that operate the control surfaces, and I'm going to make a tray for here now, a servo tray that will sit on top of this box, and that will give a very short push rod run to these horns, or tillers should we call them, and that I hope will produce a very positive response. So let's make up the servo box now. This is the layout I'm going for then. Looks a little bit unusual, but I'll try and explain it. So there'll be a servo there and one here and one there. Now, this servo will operate the throttle, this will operate the rudder, and this one will operate the elevator, and that leaves me room there to locate the switch, which will exit out to the side of the fuselage via a push rod. So I'll cut those apertures out, drill them, and then cut them out. Obviously that would be a lot easier if I had a laser cutter, but you know, such is life. I'll cut this out, make the box up, and then we'll actually install the servos ready to check whether everything works out and lines up okay. Here we go. Here we have it then, the cutout's done. And this is the way the servos will fit in. You want to be able to get them in easily. You don't want them touching the sides because that would just send vibration through the frame. We're going to insulate the servos via the grommets from that vibration. More of that in a moment, but there you go. That's how they're going to fit together. They're going to be on a box here that'll be supported by these uprights. So I'll get those glued in place, and once that's done, we'll screw the servos in place and we'll get everything rocking and rolling, moving on. There we have it, the little box made up. Now, I'm going to mount one of the servos and just show you how I go about this. I hope it's teaching your granny to suck eggs. I'm sure it is. When we're dealing with electric models, vibration isn't as big of an issue as it is with any internal combustion engine. And to make sure that the radio gear is protected from the vibration, we'll have to take a number of measures. So for example, I'll wrap the receiver in foam and then pack it inside the model. And when it comes to the servos, I always use these grommets and the little brass hats that go with them when I'm mounting them. I'll show you what I mean by that. So the first thing is, get these the right way around. The idea is that you fit the grommets and then just do two, just give you the general idea. You fit the grommets and then these little top hats go with the flat part at the bottom. Now, the reasoning behind that is, if you do it the other way around, when you screw the servo down, they cut into the wood underneath. And the idea of the actual brass itself is so that you don't crush the grommet and stop it from doing the job it's meant to do, which is absorb any vibration. So grommet first, in this case they're cut out at the end, which makes them easy to actually fit in. And then you push the little top hat from underneath, a little bit fiddly. That's one, last one. Fortunately, these little servos come with spares. You always tend to drop them. Now, I've marked on the position that I want to drill through the screws, so I'm going to make a small pilot hole for each one. And then what I'm going to do is put a little drop of super glue into that hole just to toughen up the wood. Where have I put the super glue? Wait a second, I'll find it. Super glue found. So a little drop in each pilot hole. Doesn't take much, just enough to toughen it up. And we'll let that dry a second, because the idea isn't to glue the screw in, It's to actually harden the wood either side of the hole that you've just drilled. So we'll leave that a second and then I'll screw them in place. Well, there we have it. The installation of the servos is now complete. It's hard to believe that on such a big model it can be difficult to fit servos, but this was a bit awkward, mainly because of this cross brace, which I can't move. But anyway, it's in. That's the tiller system. You can see quite short linkages, which means it's quite firm. I've linked them up. And if we look at the business end, that's what we're after. Now, all that remains to do is to connect up this pull cable for the throttle and put in the tank. Well, we'll certainly do the tank now. And then after that's completed, I think we'll call this video a day, or finished. Well, for what it is, that's going to be the final setup. When I'm happy with everything inside and the receiver and batteries are in, I'll cable tie the tank in. But there we go. That's my installation of the rudder and elevator pull or closed loop system completed. I hope that was useful to people that might be embarking on the same sort of process. If so, stay tuned for the ailerons next, and then we'll push on with the rest of this build. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and well done for sticking it this long. So take care. Bye now. Let's get creative.